Welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast with TJ and Sonny.
Hello and welcome to another episode 31 of the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. No, this is episode 32 of the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. I am joined, as always, by my best friend, Sonny Saltalamacchia. Sonny, what's happening, man?
Oh, TJ, just a nice Saturday evening, belly full of chips and Dr. Pepper, because I've been watching college football all day.
Yep.
Did go to the gym halfway through, though, to feel better about myself. But
Yep.
Yeah, man, life's good. How about you?
You think Tua's a lock for the Heisman right now?
No, because he just got his ankle hurt.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's out of the game.
What?
Yeah, bro.
Jalen Hurts, man. They shouldn't have got rid of him.
He's a stud.
Shouldn't have got rid of him. Should have kept him.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Oh, that stinks. Not a good week for quarterbacks, that's for sure. Yeah, no. I understand how that feels. I watched the Ducks and the Huskies today. Live 8 miles from Seattle and repping the Ducks.
You didn't go to the game? Why don't you go to the game?
Britt and I were going to go to the game, but we got to, you know how it is with funds. We have a couple of things we're doing this month that took precedent at this point. And I don't know, man. It's weird because since we moved out of Oregon, like I used to love college football, live for Saturdays. Sometimes Saturdays come and go now. And I go, oh, how did the Ducks do? And you remember I was a pretty big honk. So I don't know what that is. Maybe that's just
of all the honks I know, bro, your honkness is like right there towards the top.
Also,
unrivaled honkness, bro.
I've also been depressed from the A's first round yet again playoff.
You should be used to that by now, TJ.
I should be used to it, but I've just been totally depressed about that whole thing. Stinks, bro.
Are we doing a sports show now? I would love to do a sports show.
I like sports. I do like sports. But no, I'm done with all this chit chat. No, we don't even know. What are we doing tonight? What are we talking about tonight, Sonny?
Well, we're going to angle away from sports, even though we could talk about sports. This is what's our Fringe Youth Worker Podcast? 3 things. We'll do a Tales from the Fringe, something that happened in our experience. Talk about that. We'll talk about a question of the week, and then we'll talk about pick it or take it or flick it. I think it's what it's called, TJ. I don't know. It's been so long since we've done these things.
A ticket to flick it.
A ticket to flick it. We each pick 2 topics, and we talk about if we're picking it or taking it, I think. Yeah, that's
sure.
How we do it.
All right. Well, I'm done with all this chit-chat. Let's get to the show. Tales from the Fringe. Sonny, it is your night. So how about you go first? Tell us a time in your life when you experienced fringeness in all of its glory. What was that like for you?
This happened last night.
Oh,
so we did our fourth annual Halloween event where we go over to this haunted house called Milburn's. A lot of our people that we used to go to church with are there, so it's always kind of cool to see them again. And we had a big crew this time. We took 29 people there, total adults and kids. I think we had 22 kids and 7 adults. A couple of the adults, it was the first time going to this event with us. And a couple of the other adults were from different entities here where I work. So it was kind of cool. It was kind of a combined thing. And it's all people from the legal system and the juvenile system and stuff like that. So it's always pretty cool. Anyway, so we meet up. There was a couple people that I wasn't sure if they should go. One of them in particular shows up at the event or the day right before we're leaving, getting ready to leave. And we're doing a meal first and talking about it. And then the counselor pulls me aside and says, hey, I really want this person to go. They just got kicked out of their house. They have nowhere to go. If they go to the event, maybe we can, reel them in, blah, blah, blah. But the person prior to this had been acting a fool in group and acting up and stuff like that and not really buying into the program and stuff. So I was like, So my gut told me no, but then I was like, all right, we'll take it. Anyway, so fast forward, we're at the event. Next thing I know, person I was hesitant about, I was kind of wandering off from the group. And to set the scene, it's like it's 7 o'clock at night. It's dark. We're in kind of the woods because, Millburn's, the haunted house is kind of in this podunk area. It's a large group of people. Everywhere is dark except for where we're at in this lighted area underneath this little canopy thing. And this girl starts like walking off and wandering off, And then I hear that she's high on what's called triple C's. And that just kind of makes you real loopy and stuff like that, And so I'm like, oh, great. And so I talked to the counselor who recommended that she comes, and I said, hey, go check in with her, see what's going on. And so she says, yeah, she's all messed up. So, and this is like in front of like, all their kids and all their adults and stuff like that. So people are starting to look. And so I'm like, all right, we got to get her home. So then I had two of my counselors take her and then her friend home. So then they leave in one of the cars that came up with us. We took a bus and then a van and then an extra car. Anyway, so then they take off. So I'm like, all right, cool. Like things are settled. Well, then there was another friend that was with them. So then the effects must have started hitting her. So then she starts being all loopy and stuff, dude. I'm just like, what the heck, man? And she like was trying to like run from staff, and like I caught her trying to run around the ticket booth and stuff. And I'm trying to talk to her, and she couldn't even put together a sentence, man. Like, dude, she was looped out of her mind. So then I'm like, crap, I can't afford to send another couple counselors home, because I've already down 2 counselors for the event. And I'm like, all right, great. So I grabbed another counselor whose client she was, and I said, hey, you got to watch her. You got to, because we haven't even gone through the haunted houses yet, man. We're still in line, And so I was like, you got to monitor her. You just got to stand with her and watch her. And so she did. And then as I'm going through the haunted houses, I'm getting texts from the counselor saying, she tried to run from me. She tried to ditch me in the crowd. And good thing she has a bright green jacket on. All this kind of stuff, dude. It was crazy, man. And so
hold on. I hate to stop stories in mid thing, but at this point, are you at all thinking like, I'm going to put somebody who's high on some sort of something through a haunted house?
Of course. that was already, and that's why I said she's not going. So I said prior to this, I mean, we joked about that. I said, well, if she does go through, she'll probably never use these drugs again because it'll be such a bad trip for her. She'll be out of her mind, So we had that laugh, of course. But at the same time, no way was I going to do that because a lot of these kids have trauma and they have these horrible pasts. And even taking them to a haunted house, we always talk about in the beginning, we say, look, if at any time you're in the haunted house, and you're freaking out, raise your hand. We can take out, go out one of the quick exits or something like that because it could be triggering and traumatizing for these people. There was one girl who went with us last night whose father hung himself in her house. Oh. And then she's walking through a haunted house with people, being hung and stuff like that. So we actually talked about that prior to and stuff and made sure she was going to be cool. And I actually went through with her to make sure she was cool, and she was cool. So anyway, so yeah. So the last remaining drug girl, I had my counselor stay with her. Of course, she didn't go through the haunted house. And they just kind of hung out in the waiting area and outside and stuff like that. And by the end of the day or the end of the night, everybody got home safely and stuff. But even like I checked in with the other 2 counselors who took the 2 girls home. And when they tried to drop the girl off at her house, she'd been kicked out of her mom's house. So they had to go find her grandma's house. And she wasn't exactly sure where her grandma lived. So apparently she was like knocking on doors in the neighborhood trying to find the grandma. Dude. Finally found it. And then and then we get back to the office. All the kids go home. We have our debrief session. We talk about it. And then after that, when I'm getting ready to leave and I'm like sweeping up the leaves and stuff that everybody drugged inside to make sure I don't get yelled at on Monday morning because you know how that is. And then the grandma or the mom calls and says, what do I do with her and stuff? So the counselor and the mom are talking for like 20 minutes. And it's like one of these horrible scenarios, The mom doesn't have a car. There's a bunch of kids in the home. The girl's freaking out. And I thought she was at grandma's, but apparently grandma took her to her mom's or something. And so they couldn't take her to the hospital to get checked up and cleared because they don't have a car. So she was going to call the police on her to protect the kids. And so it's just like, dude, it's just nutty, man. Just crazy and stuff. So, so that was last night. There you go.
This isn't even fair, dude. And this is what I think is funny. It's not even fair because you have so many stories of people on drugs or yelling, screaming at you F-bombs or just different gang affiliations. I mean, it's just not fair. because I always feel like I'm coming in soft, but man, what is that? That's nuts. That is so, that is,
it's just who we work with,
and,
man.
and who the heck, what the heck is Triple C? What is Triple C? What is it?
Triple C? Triple C is like, it's a slang term for the cold medicine quercetin. It's like cough and cold, and it contains a hallucinogenic ingredient called dextromorphine or dextromethorphan or something like that.
So did they do this on purpose? Did they take this stuff because they knew they were going to the haunted house and they're like, hey,
of course, probably, yeah. It smelled like weed. I mean, our kids weren't smoking, but like, you know, you get high and go to a haunted house, of course, you know. I mean, it's cool stuff. Back in May, when I was living that lifestyle, we would, you know, before doing cool things, you would do that kind of stuff. So it enhances the moment, so to say. But it sucks, and it's going to lead into a question I'm going to ask you on the pick it or flick it down the road and stuff like that about events and protocol and stuff like that.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it led to a really good discussion with the team because, you know, we had 6 people with us on our team plus 3 other adults. We had 9 people there total. And so praise God for having such a big team, you know, like, and in the moment, I was super proud of how we all handled it. Like, we didn't make a big deal. We didn't get all the extra kids involved. We didn't embarrass the girl who was high on drugs. And obviously, you know, something's going on in her life and stuff. So you don't want to embarrass her. It was kind of low key. We handled it. The other 2 counselors, as soon as I said, hey, you guys got to take her home, like, no problem, let's go. The other counselor who had to stay back with the kid, no problem, I'll do it. And there was no like complaining afterwards. There was no like, oh, I didn't get to go to the haunted house and stuff. Like, every counselor just knew their role and just did it and stuff. You know, it was super, super cool from that aspect. Like, the team was just, their strength was demonstrated and stuff like that, you know. And then the counselors who were remaining, just it was like we didn't skip a beat, man. It was super cool.
Do you ever get any kickback from managers or superiors who are like, you know, because I know you're an outside of the box guy. You don't want to just do you don't want to do just counseling inside of a cold facility. Yeah. You're always taking them on trips, doing different things, going to the beach, taking them to camp, taking them to haunted house. Do you ever get any pushback? Because, you know, a lot of these stories happen at these events when you have them for a prolonged amount of time. Do you ever get any kickback from people saying, hey, you gotta stop doing this because there's too much liability here, or is everyone pretty cool with it?
Everyone's pretty cool with it. The last event we did at the Beavers game when the kids stole something, I called the big boss, and he goes, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. Because in all reality, all the events we've done, there hasn't really been a lot of issues. Like, this is the second time in 7 years of doing events with these kids and mental health and addiction issues that we've actually had to state to a kid, you have to go home. Like, we've had kids voluntarily want to leave like camp before after a few days or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
But we've never had to really like send people home from the events and stuff. And I think a lot of that, and this was talked about in the debriefing session, is on the front end, if your process for allowing kids to come to the event is good, then it's a calculated risk. You know what I'm saying? Like, you mitigate your risk by who you allow to come to the event. And this time we let that slide a little bit. You know what I'm saying? We got to.
So it sounds like you're at a good organization that sort of gets the vision of what you're trying to do out there. So that's.
Yeah, my boss totally gets it. You know, like I said, he's like, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often and stuff. And
that's good. That's good. Well, good. I'm just gonna have to try some of the CCC stuff, man. I don't know. You know, like, is it Triple C? Is that what it is? Sorry.
Yeah, you're gonna try Triple C's. What did you say?
Is it what you call it? Triple C, didn't you?
Yeah.
The drug.
Yeah.
I said CCC.
It's quercetin, cough and cold pills and stuff like that.
Okay. And where can I get it? No joking. So Sonny, I had a surgery recently, and I got to take some happy medicine, and I said some things I shouldn't have said in front of my kids. And they told me about it later, which was always awesome to be in a situation where your kids are like,
what kind of medicine were you
on? Valium.
Okay.
Valium.
Yeah.
It was, and you know, here I think part of my thing is I just don't do anything, and so when I do something, it always hits me a little harder than other things. But I don't know. It was just, it was very relaxing. I'll say that much. I didn't have a whole lot of I didn't have a whole lot of cares in the world. I'll say that much. You know, like it's good. Anyway, here's my tell from the Fringe. Gosh, probably 12 years ago, I was in Portland, and I was working at this church up in Northeast Portland, and it was actually pretty. I mean, Northeast Portland isn't like a great place, but I was working at a pretty solid neighborhood church, and I was working with a youth pastor who had kind of given up. He was kind of already burnt out, and he was just still going through the motions, still doing things, but he'd also do some things that weren't cool. One of those things that he would do is he would show up sometimes, and he'd look around, and he would turn to me, and I was kind of like an unpaid intern, which meant that the church didn't know that I was an intern, but he called me an intern somehow. And that just meant that I did more of his work for him. He'd look around at a different night and say, "Hey, can you handle tonight? I got some other things I got to do." And
that's not cool.
I had no prep, talk, game, worship music, nothing. And we just have to do it. And truthfully, it was a really good experience for me because, I learned how to kind of do things on the fly, but it was also just not really healthy. But he also did some other cool things. And one of the cool things he would do was he would go take the church van, and they had like a 16-passenger van, and he would go to this area where he had a connection, and it was kind of a rough neighborhood, a little ways away, where he had a connection with this other guy and he'd pick up these kids, sort of like what you would do, Sonny, bring some of these kind of rough kids into youth group. Mm-hmm. And so he would go and he'd pick them up, and he would bring them to youth group, and then he'd take them back. And usually about 6 or 7 of them would jump in there. And they were filled with personality. They had all sorts of things they wanted to say to everybody. And it was obvious when they showed up because they just filled the room, and they were actually hilarious, like stupidly funny, but they were rough around the edges, for sure. Rough around the edges. And so it's game time. And Adam has, I'm going to have to delete that name. The youth pastor had just dropped those kids off, looked at me and said, "Hey, can you handle tonight?" And there's like 15 kids there. And I'm like, "Yeah, I could probably handle it." And so I go to play a game, and then I see these 3 girls sitting on the couch, and they want nothing to do with the game. And we've all been there, right? Like, there's just that group that doesn't want anything to do with the game. But I was young. I hadn't had a day of being a youth pastor. And here's like, I'm getting thrown in there, and I'm like, we should get everyone to play. That's the whole thing. I wanted everyone.
We're not going to start until you join us.
I didn't do that. But what I did is I said, "Hey," I told a couple of the kids, "Why don't you go ask them if they want to play?" And they did. They went over there, and man, it was funny to watch. But in the time, I was freaking out. But I watched this kid go over there, who's just this high-end church kid, homeschooled, got glasses on, really into Star Wars. And he walks up to these 3 African-American girls who are from the wrong part of town, and he goes, "Hey, would you like to come over and play Captain Jinx with us?" And they look at him, and they cuss him out. Just straight cuss him down. All 3 of them just take turns just making fun of him, calling him a corny mother effer. and the kid just looks like he's never experienced this in his whole entire life, man. Never experienced any of this in his whole life. And he comes back, and he looks at me and goes, "I don't think they want to play." And I go, "Yeah." And the youth group would stop just to watch them do that, right? And so like I couldn't just like let it sit there because it was just too big of a deal. And like, so I kind of had to go over and I was like, "Okay, we got to do some conflict resolution here. We got to, let them know that it's not, we want them here, but this is not how they act." And so I did. I went over there. We all kind of sat together on the couch, and we sort of just asked them to like tell us. And like, I didn't really know how to like say, "Hey, you can't do that," But I just sort of just started asking questions like, "Hey, where are you guys from? What's your story? Tell us a little bit about yourself." And they did. And they all took turns sort of just kind of like telling us their whole life story. And they were really open about it, and they were kind of funny about it, but they were also just like, it was obvious that the kids that were in the youth group and these kids who were getting, kind of bussed in, they were from very different worlds. And I think that whole experience, even I look back, it's kind of funny, but that night was kind of a night where I think some people learned, and I think on both sides learned a little bit about people that they would have never talked to or never really gotten a chance to. And the cool thing about it was afterwards, a couple of the girls came up to me and said, no one's really ever asked us any of those questions before.
Yeah.
And I was like, no one's ever asked you like where you're from and where you go to school and what your home life's like. And no one's ever asked you that stuff. He's like, no one really cares where I come from on that stuff. And they just kept coming back. And the crazy thing is, like, they went from being like these crazy outsiders to a few weeks later, they were playing the game. They were all about it. And they became like when they weren't there, youth group wasn't the same type people. And it was a really, really cool thing. I didn't get to work with him for long because I was just an unpaid intern there. But I often think about that, like the way that, like, man, just a little bit of fringe kid, like some fringe kids make a youth group so much better. I don't know what that is, but it gives it purpose and mission and different perspective. And I think if you have a good culture of church kids who can handle the rough edges, you can really, really turn your culture with just a few fringe kids.
Well, and I think the biggest thing that you share there is that a lot of times these kids who you're scared to talk to, sometimes all they want is just somebody to say, hey, I'm TJ, what's your name? And I remember that. I remember being a fringe kid, showing up to youth group at 20 years old, chasing this stupid 18-year-old girl I was dating. And I remember showing up there and this guy goes, hey, I'm Scott, what's your name? And I remember, like, no one had ever really, like, introduced themselves like that to me in years, man. And it was so powerful that somebody said, hey, what's your name? And then I started going to the youth group, and then like 2 or 3 meetings in, we're in there praying, and this kid who I thought was a complete nerd and douchebag, in my head, he goes, God, I thank you for Sonny, and I thank you for who he is. And I'm just like, what the heck? Like, this kid's like thankful for me and stuff like that, And to this day, honestly, TJ, that's what drives what I do, man. It's because even the girl last night, like she's had such a rough life. She thinks, she wants to grow up and do whatever. She has no idea of the power in her, And last week we had a kid in our office. He's one of the kids that went with us to the Grammys, and he's hanging around, and he just has nothing going on. And so we started talking to him and speaking life into him and speaking about what he's passionate about and what he could be doing. And he doesn't have his GED or anything. So we went down and helped him get signed up for his GED test. And he came back, and we were just speaking life into him. And all of a sudden he just starts crying. And he's like, man, you guys are making me cry. And he's like a 20-year-old, black kid and stuff. Like, he's a cool dude, but he just broke down, man. Cause it's like these kids, they come from nothing, and they put on these defenses that make you think they don't want to talk, but really they're dying to open up, man. They're dying to be known, And when you're known, then it's like, then things are okay,
Yeah. And almost everything they do, whether you're on the fringe or not on the fringe, is to be known. Everything you do, especially in those core adolescent years, is I want to know who I am, and I want others to know who I am. And almost every good and bad thing that teenagers do comes from those places. And it reminds me of a Marco quote that said, do you view teenagers as a problem to be solved or as a wonder to behold? And I thought, that's so true. Because every organization that's trying to reach teenagers either takes one of those two views. And the ones that are good and the ones that are actually making an impact view teenagers, even teenagers who are tripping at the haunted house, as a wonder to behold.
Yeah, man.
And that is really a wonder to behold, to tell you the truth. It is a wonder to behold when you got 3 black girls on a couch just cussing out some homeschool kid. I mean, it's a wonder there that started happening. But it's true. And, so this is one of the things that I think we don't talk about enough on our podcast, but I honestly think one of the best times in my ministry, and maybe even in yours, I can't speak for yours, but was when you were doing your work with your students and then you were bringing them to youth group. Because here's the cool thing about it was those kids that you were bringing, they were getting met at all different levels. Because if a kid just like that showed up at youth group, we would be ill-equipped to handle all of their problems. Like it would be above our pay grade if one of your kids just showed up at youth group, and they do sometimes. And you always feel like, I can't really help them. But the cool thing about when you started bringing them was you were working on that side of things, and you were working in the places where I felt ill-equipped. But then they're kind of getting this holistic approach to health, where you're kind of working on the emotional and even some of the physical things going on in their lives, and we were covering the spiritual. And I think that those students, I don't know if we can look, at their lives now, but at the same time, I think that that time was one of the best times, because they got those kids who got to be a part of that time. We're getting hit from both sides, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I think when the church can partner with local youth organizations who focus on mental health and addiction stuff, then those kids who don't even like church can be helped. I was in line at the event, and Chris was there. His daughter Danica was there, and she's taller now, and she.
And we've talked about Chris on the show before. We told the story of Big Chris and Cohen.
Yeah, Big Chris. So
yeah.
So anyway, so Danica was there, and I was talking to her and stuff, and she was all dressed up as like a creepy little girl. So I was trying to pay her money to go scare some of my kids. Anyway, so there's one of my kids goes, "Who's that? How do you know that girl?" I go, "I used to go to church with her." And the kid goes, "You go to church?" and I was thinking in my head, like, is it a bad thing that he's shocked that I go to church, or is it a good thing that he's shocked? I was trying to wait in my head.
Yeah.
But it was just that he was like, "You go to church?" And so many of these kids, they look at church like, why the hell would I ever go to church?
Yeah.
And so, but if a church is doing it right and can kind of come at both sides of that and not be offended when that kid comes in dropping F-bombs, then you're doing good things.
Well, I think that's a huge piece right there, is that you got to have a culture that's okay with the rough edges. I mean, you got to be able to, you can't just stop them in their tracks. Hey, you're wearing a hat in church. Hey, your pants are not the right
your
size.
hat's backwards, turn it around. Like,
all the stuff that's going on. You can't have a church that's just not ready. I mean, and I've been in those situations. And so it really is a culture thing. You got to kind of ready your culture for it. But when it works, man, it works so well. Man, it is a wonder to behold in those moments.
Question of the week, TJ. Let's do our first segment of the show. It's called Question of the Week. And normally you have a question. You try to stump me.
Did you say you have the question? Oh, that's during pick or flick time.
So far, I am 32 for 32 of not being stumped by your questions of the week. And so here we go.
The way Sonny views not being stumped is that he has an answer. Like, it's not really that like he answers correctly. It's just that he has an answer. So in the same way that like the class clown is 32 for 32 on when the teacher calls for him, that's the same way that Sonny is defining his success in these things.
Well, I was also the class clown, so
yeah,
I'm double right now.
Me too.
Like Dwight, who ate a fetus, he was like double empowered. I am double empowered.
This should just, as much as we reference sports in the office, like we should just stop calling this like a youth ministry podcast and just call it Sports in the Office.
You want to know what I got this week, TJ?
What?
I got a new addition for my office. It is this guy right here.
Oh, you got one of those pop head guys.
But look who it is.
Oh, it's Prison Mike.
One of the greatest characters of all time on TV.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Were you there that night? I did the Barabbas kind of thing where I was like that white rapper at youth. Okay, so yeah, you would remember that. And I definitely, the whole time I did it, I felt like Prison Mike. I totally felt like Prison Mike. But to this day, like when people talk to me from that time in life, they talk to me about Barabbas. So anyway, all this stuff is not useful to anybody out there except for us. All right, you ready for the question?
Yeah, go
ahead. What is one thing you are hopeful about?
One thing I'm hopeful about in life, for work or what, with French kids?
However, any way you want to interpret it.
I will, because it's a French show and the work I do. I'm hopeful right now for my team. We have, for years, it was kind of like a one-man show. And for me, it was basically me doing like registrations and doing groups and doing assessments and doing stuff in the community and doing events. And then I got to hire Casey, who's been there now, I think, for like 5 years. She's kind of fluctuated between half-time, part-time, having baby time, all that kind of stuff. So it was me and her for a while. And then about 2 years ago, we brought on this counselor named Jill. And she was kind of at the same time, we were kind of doing stuff. We were doing stuff to bridge where I worked at. We were building up, and where Jill was working at, she was building up, and then she joined up with us. And then so she's been there for 3 years. Then we just hired 2 other counselors. And we hired this guy named George Hay almost 8 months ago, it's close to a year ago. And he's kind of like our admin guy, kind of do everything kind of guy. And we just have like this super strong team now where everybody kind of gets it. Everybody gets the vibe. Everybody gets the culture. Nobody's kind of like really tripping about how we do things or why we do things or anything like that. And it's just awesome, man. Like a couple days or a couple weeks ago on a random Tuesday afternoon, we had 3 groups going on. I was doing an assessment on a new kid, and then George was in there playing video games with other kids. And so like we had like 4 or 5 rooms occupied all at once with just a ton of kids. And so I'm really hopeful for like the capacity that we have now and the bandwidth that we have to really kind of do some cool stuff. And so we're planning for events. We're planning for another alumni event, and it's just exciting, man. It's cool to have a big team.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I mean, I think that anybody who's, especially youth pastors, we tend to fly a little solo. It's one of the things that we dream about is just having a team around us. And it took me a lot of years before I got some people around me who were paid. You're always around volunteers, but volunteers are there when they can be.
They want to be, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not the same. And there's a lot of things you can't ask a volunteer to do. I mean, a lot of people ask their volunteers to do all sorts of things, but volunteers are giving their own time. So it's like, that whole thing. So I definitely can relate to that. And I'm glad you have a good team. It makes going to work fun. It makes going to work a privilege. So I love that.
I agree.
All right. One thing I'm hopeful for, this is, I guess, maybe more of a personal goal. But I'm hopeful to like one day, like run a department. I mean, I kind of do that now, but it's like me and one other person. And so it kind of goes to that place of I have an assistant and that's awesome, but I would love to be the student ministries pastor and have a high school program guy or a high school youth pastor and a middle school youth pastor and just sort of just be over all that. And not in the way that I don't have to go to youth group anymore. Cause I want to be there every week, but I don't know, man, I'm just at a place in my career where I've been doing it for 13 years full time now and like 17 years altogether. And I really, really feel like I got a knowledge base and I have enough skills and enough know-how to really help out some guys and bring along some guys. And as I think about like my own personal development, I think, man, I wish I would have started like under another youth pastor instead of like in a little tiny church under a senior pastor. I wish I would have, learned from somebody who was actively in the field instead of just kind of have to make all my mistakes. So it looks like in the next year or two, we're going to be making a hire for a junior high person. And,
nice.
And, if you're a Fringe listener or rando out there and you're like, man, I'd like to work with TJ, contact me because there might be something opening up here in our middle school department. And I would love to be your boss. I would love to be your boss. So yeah, I'm hopeful for that. I want to get to that place where I'm, the department head more than just the youth pastor. So
do you think you're getting tired of the day-to-day, like being on the front lines?
No, it's not really out of it. It's not that I'm tired. It's that I feel like I need to start giving back. And honestly, man, I have youth pastors now, and this is weird. But for the first time in my life, because I've gotten more active on the youth pastor forums and I've been putting my ideas out there and doing things that, I hadn't done for years and years. There's a lot of youth pastors who like know me, who've never met me, but they like know me by my body of work. Let's call it that, And so I get these random emails all the time.
What a body it is.
What a body it is. But I do get these random emails from guys all over the country who are, just starting, or they're, asking questions about this or that. And it's crazy because I mean, it's not part of any of my job description or any of my home life stuff, but I absolutely love talking to them and helping them out. And so that love is what I'm really trying to get. I'm trying to get to a place where I get to do more of that, where I get to really just pass on some of this stuff. That makes sense. So it's not really out of like, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this, but it's more out of the place of like, I need to start giving back. And I really want to, I mean, when I'm done with youth ministry, I would love to have 4 or 5 guys who are actively youth pastors somewhere in the country who are like, TJ gave me my start or something like that. I think that would be really cool.
We are still listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
All right, pick or flick. Time where we just do some hot topics, just like the mall. Hot topic where Sonny hangs out
topics.
Sonny hangs out in the.
Was that the commercial? Topic. What are you gonna pick? Hot topic.
No, it's Hot Pocket, dude. That's a famous Jim Gaffigan skit. I can't believe I just had to tell you that.
I know. I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. Kidding. No, you're not. Yes, you want to play that off? You want to play that off?
100% kidding.
How much Trip C did you take before this
podcast?
I
put that on the Raiders. You know I'm not kidding. Mom, I could be joking about, but if I put on the Raiders, I ain't joking about that.
All right. This is the hot topic. You gonna pick or flick it? I'll start. You ready?
Okay.
TikTok.
I don't know, bro. I know you're all cracked on TikTok right now.
Have you spent any time on it? Have you downloaded it or looked at it at all?
I spent a little bit of time on it, and I think I'm gonna pick it because I think I'm at the point now in my illustrious career of doing whatever just to get by. I think any social media is a chance to connect, and if that's where kids are, you need to go to them. At the same time, you need to be careful, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's where the kids are. I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and really high profile people there, really intelligent people there. And they were talking about a way to reach kids. And they were like, we're going to like make a billboard. And I was like, in my head, I was like, what? And so I was like, you're going to do what? And so I said, why don't we create an Instagram profile? Because research shows 3 out of 4 kids are on Instagram. Why don't we create a Snapchat? I even mentioned you. I said, my buddy, he's been doing these 1-minute messages things, and they're getting popular. Why don't we go to where they are and create like profiles and ads there and things there? And then this one like super intelligent doctor guy goes, well, the apps that my kids are on may not be the apps that your kids are on. I'm like, dude, every kid's on Instagram and Snapchat. It's like, I don't want to argue with them. I was like, okay, whatever, guy. Yeah. But yeah, so I'll pick it.
Yeah, my boy picking it. You know me. I'm on there. I'm blowing up. I got 2 accounts because my first one got banned. Yeah.
How many followers you got on there?
So on my first account that got banned, I had 5,000.
I don't care about your first one. How many you got on your second one?
My second one, I got 5,800 now. So it just went over 8. It just beat my other account today.
Nice.
And so I'm pretty excited about that. But at the same time, I'm not even close to like.
Are you super excited that you have 5,000 followers on a teen forum?
Yes, because I am a youth pastor.
Remember that episode of Michael Scott where he signed up for that website?
Little kid lover. So they know where my priorities. Yes. No, I think about that constantly. But the cool thing is, man, I mean, there's I've encouraged other youth pastors to get on there, and they've gotten popular on there. And the cool thing is, if you get on TikTok and you look at like Christian, all this other stuff, you can see where my 1-minute message has like influenced a whole like denomination of TikTokers on there.
Okay, calm down, Joel.
And no, it's cool, dude. For me, it's like, it's not like I'm so awesome, but it's like, it's cool to have meant something to some sort of community or some sort of something somewhere in there. But yeah, dude, I'm excited about it. Every day I think about, man, how can I engage with this group of teenagers who are on TikTok, and I have a bunch of students who are on TikTok, which is
Okay.
very cool because then I show them my account. They're like, how do you have so many followers? What the heck? Like, oh, I only have 200, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
gives me
yeah.
a little clout with them, which is not
You
a
got some
bad
clout,
thing to
get
have.
some TikTok clout.
Yeah. Some clout with them. And yeah, it's cool, man. And I think this is what I love about TikTok is it's storytelling, and it's very Gen Z storytelling. For a long time, like Instagram and Facebook, it gave you just a part of the picture. And what I love about TikTok and video is that video, you get to see like a little bit more of the human there, And so when they're doing their lip sync songs or, and then they laugh afterwards, like you get that there's a human there. And I just love that storytelling about things. I love that students are making little videos and movies again in life and putting them out there for other people to see. And I love to just see where the culture's going. So it really gives me a good chance to be kind of someone who's studying culture a little bit. And that's for good or bad, but for the most part, I like it. So I'm going to pick it.
I don't think any of my kids get on. I never hear them talk about TikTok. They're on Instagram and Snapchat. And those are the two.
So next time you're in one of your groups, Sonny, I want you to say these words to them. Okay. Don't even ask them if they're on TikTok. Don't ask them if they're on TikTok. Just say these words to them. Say, Martha dump truck in the flesh. Okay. That's what all I want you to say.
We talk about videos all the time, but I haven't heard that one at all.
Yeah. But all you have to do is just say those words and see if they say something back to you. And then you'll know, even if they're trying to hide it, that they're on TikTok. Okay.
That's
the one.
Okay,
so write it down. Martha dump truck in the flesh. Okay. And if they say something back to that really quick, you'll know, oh, you are on TikTok. All right. You are on TikTok. All right.
But it's
Because
also on Reddit. I just found it on Reddit.
What I just read?
That video. Yeah, the video.
Yeah, it's taken over. Anyway, with that being said, it's yours. What's your next pick or flick?
I don't know. I'm watching that video right now, bro. What the chick? Why is that chick laughing like that?
It's not just one video, dude. That's an audio that these kids all do these things with. So you can't just be looking up right now. It's gonna take you like 25 minutes to just figure out what TikTok is.
All right, here we go. Ready? Here's my first one. First one, I'm starting easy. Fantasy football.
Flick.
Why flick? Why?
Well, first of all, I got into it a few years ago and like buried myself in it, and then I still lost the season. Like it's like a ginormous waste of time. Like nothing I can think of what sucks time like fantasy football. It's like a giant role-playing game that doesn't just end. It's just constantly going. And so I mean, sure, it got some people into football who weren't into football before. The creators of it were like, man, we got to figure out a way to engage with this. But one of the things I don't like it in the way that it's a giant time suck. I don't like it in the fact that I was never good at it. I was always in the last place the 2 years I played because I sold out to Colin Kaepernick.
You're not a very
good
sports fan.
And then the other reason is because I am such a one team. I root for one team in every sport. Like people are like, oh, I got like 4 teams. I'm like, you don't really like the team. You don't really like sports if you have 4 teams.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what happens with me in fantasy football is like, because I'm a Niners fan, I'll always be like, yes, give me Jimmy Garoppolo. You won't
get a Seahawks fan. You won't get Rams. You won't get the other.
Yeah. There's just too much. Like it messes too much with my allegiance to my sports team. And so for that reason, like I can't get into it. And then I'm like, I hated the fact that all of a sudden I was watching a Bears game and hoping that their tight end caught 3 more passes. And it just like, for me, it was like, it drew me in too much and it made me think too much about things and it added pressure to my weekend. And I didn't need more pressure in my weekend. So I flicked that hard. Maybe just all personal things, and I'm not against people who play it, but I'm not.
Well, it sounds like you are.
I'm not going to do it.
I took some time off. I played it a lot, got cracked on it. And then played Madden forever, and you know how cracked on that I was. I always looked at Madden as like fantasy football and cracked to umpteenth power. And then I played this year for the first time in a while, and I've like fallen in love with fantasy football all over again, man. It's so fun, and like I forget how many people play. Like every PO I interact with plays. Everybody, a couple people in my work play. Just like everybody talks about it. And it's so fun because then you learn about you learn who the tight end on the Bears is, and you learn who these random players are and stuff like that. And it actually makes Sunday, like, now I have a vested interest in a whole bunch of games and stuff like that, which, probably to my wife's chagrin, but it enhances my football watching to the nth degree. So it's really fun. But an interesting thing, TJ, do you know who invented fantasy football?
Yeah, I don't know it perfectly, but I do know that it was a few like kind of nerdier people, right? Like people who were really into more like.
That's like the most biggest generalization of ever.
Okay, well, it was like guys who they had to watch football for some reason because everyone else was into football, so they needed a way to watch it and play a game at the same time.
False.
Okay, so tell me.
Bill Winkenbach, who had a financial stake in the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders invented fantasy football. That's all you need to know.
He had a financial stake in.
He had a financial stake in the Oakland Raiders, and back then, this is the honest to God truth, the Raiders sucked. And so he wanted a way to make football more interesting, and so they invented this game called fantasy football.
I don't doubt it.
They would draft the players from other teams and play weekly against each other, and that's where it all started.
I don't doubt any of that, because if you've been a Raiders fan for a long time, you fantasize about other types of football constantly. So
a lot of sucking.
Any way to watch that game and make it more digestible and be like, wow, at least we got a running back this year. That's what being a Raiders fan was for a while. Hey, we got the best kicker in the league. Remember that? That was like 20 years where that was the Raiders.
The very first fantasy football league ever was called the Greater Oakland Professional Pigskin Procrastinators League.
Well, and you know what? It makes sense too, because the Raiders for like 20 straight years, the biggest thing they had going was a kicker, right?
Yeah.
And in fantasy
we
football,
tried other things, but it just didn't work.
But in fantasy football, having a good kicker is a big
means a lot. You can win sometimes.
Didn't you take a kicker in the first round?
And he was the best kicker of all time.
Yeah, come on. I mean, seriously, it was a good pick.
But
at the same time, like that,
he was on Seattle.
Maybe
there
that's
for a while.
why fantasy football is slanted towards kickers. Anyway,
maybe, who knows?
Anyway, well, that took us to a different place. Maybe this should become a sports podcast. We get a little more passionate there.
I'm far more passionate about sports than I am working with kids on the fringes of society. Okay.
Let's create something called Fantasy Fringe Kid,
fringe sports.
Yeah, you can start it at your work. Like, will this kid get through the whole program?
Let's talk about transgender weightlifting. That's a fringe sport.
I'm probably gonna have to cut that out, but yeah,
that's on the fringes of society.
Yeah. I don't know. All right. Anyway, you just isolated all of our transgender audience, Sonny. So,
that's okay.
Anyway, all right. I got one for you. Ready? South Park.
Oh, pick it all day long. South Park is the only truest TV show on TV. Like, they pull no punches. They make fun of everybody. And if you're a Christian, you're like, "Whoa, they're going on Christians." Well, they go in on everybody. And if you pay attention, they really only make fun of the crazy, ludicrous things about things and stuff like that. Like this whole thing with China, like they doubled down on the thing with China. And if you're paying attention what's happening in China, it's horrible what's happening to China. And then you got LeBron James, who's all about people and people in the corners of the world being able to have equal rights and blah, 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 blah. And then he's all about his bag when it comes to China. He catered. Oh, man, I go off on days for that. South Park, pick it 100% because to me, it's the only truest TV show on TV. Like, they pull no punches. They make fun of everybody.
Well, I don't actively watch South Park. I love the critiques that come up in culture almost all the time. And what South Park does well, even I don't watch it because like I don't really watch cartoons like as an adult. Like I can never really can't get into that. What?
You think you're better than me?
Well, I did have a whole diatribe about Toy Story at one point in one of these Fringe episodes, but I do like that they call out hypocrisy in all
exactly.
And I actually enjoy when they call out hypocrisy in the church, because I think that Christians should be calling out hypocrisy in the church. If you want to actually like make sure that this brand of Christianity, or that Christianity gets bestowed into the next generation, you've got to address the skeletons in the closet. And
Exactly.
and if you don't do it, other people will, and South Park will. And then if other people are doing it and everyone else is laughing at you, then that's when you have a problem. The best time is to laugh at yourself, which is kind of what John Christ does. Like, he kind of makes fun of Christians over and over and over and over.
Yeah. South Park is the cartoon version of John Christ.
Yeah. And so, but South Park's about culture. It's about where our culture's at. And I couldn't agree with you more. I love that they went after China and they went after LeBron, and they verbatim put what he was saying into an episode and I love it because that's the best thing you can possibly do, right?
Yes.
It's not even parody. It's just, let's change the names and put it in a situation that's different, and you tell me if this sounds okay or not. And so because when we hear it and it's LeBron, it's like, well, he wasn't really trying to say, but you take it out of there, you take it out of the context, take LeBron off of this and just take it at its core value and give it word for word, and then all of a sudden it sounds terrible, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe what LeBron is saying is terrible and he should be criticized for that. Not that he should be cast out or this should be part of his legacy forever, but the dude needs to be called to the mat for saying something stupid. That's just absolutely true. And then
on top of it, they have Cartman singing about Taco Tuesday, which LeBron James tried to trademark for himself, dude. They pull no punches, man. They don't care, dude. They just don't care.
And I love that. I love that about them. And in that way, I mean, they are the best satirist I think living right now.
Yeah.
And what I like about them is they go after everybody.
Yeah.
So many of the satirists,
they're unbiased. They're unbiased.
Well, I think every human's got bias, but they're not partisan. I'll say it that way. It's not a right left thing with them. For them, it's like if they see hypocrisy in culture, they're going to call it out. And they're coming
after you.
But I've also disagreed with some of their critiques too. But I think that's okay. I think that's what the great thing about satire is. I'll pick it, even though I'm not actively watching it. Do you watch episodes? Are you actively watching, or do you just like when it pops up?
I cannot confirm or deny.
Okay. Who would have been the best satirist if he wouldn't have given it up? Cannot confirm. The Chappelle Show, but we can go on that for way too long.
We've already talked about Chappelle Show forever.
All right, go ahead. You're up. And this is your one. This is the one you literally told me that you were going to ask me a question in this.
I
haven't done that.
Yeah. Using events as carrots.
Okay, can you just explain? I know what you're talking about, but just for our listeners, kind of.
I don't think you do, and I think you're covering up by making me talk to the listeners.
I do know what you're saying, but just give, like, what you're saying is basically, hey, there's this event that we're having, come to it, and then come and be part of our program.
No, not at all.
Okay, so tell me about it. I see what you're saying. As incentive for people already in your program.
Correct. Okay. So we have these events. So we have our program where we do groups every week. We do individuals every week. We have our standard outpatient treatment. We have video games, all food, all that kind of stuff that we do every week, programming every week. Looks like, it's like youth group, but 5 days a week. So we do that 5 days a week. Every kid can come to that no matter what. But then we have these events that we do sometimes a couple times a month, sometimes we do once a month. And right now we're in our event season where we're doing events every single month. And I've always gone back and forth with who do we invite to the events, because in all honesty, the girl who was on drugs at the last event needed that event probably more than anybody else. You know what I'm saying? And so I always struggle with that. And the team, a lot of our conversation this last weekend or yesterday, the debriefing was around, was it such a bad thing to invite this girl? And when you use the event as a carrot, it can be a good thing and a bad thing and stuff. So what do you draw the line on when your event, like camp and stuff like that? Like,
I'm kind of okay. So I'm not going to pick or flick this. I'm going to flip it because I'm just going to rephrase it in a way that makes sense to me. I think you have to have some things that are incentive and some things that aren't. So I think that there's some events that you're using as a carrot for your program. Mm-hmm. So like for me, camp is that way. Camp is a big event that people get excited about, and it's very easy to invite your friends to camp. And so it's a carrot.
Do you ever tell somebody no to camp?
No, not on camp.
You never say no to camp.
Never say no to camp. Now there's some kids who sign up for camp that I'm like, oh, dang it. But at the same time, though, that's a entry level program. However, I think there are things that are reserved for upper echelon program kids. And the way we've done this before, and you've been a part of this program, is mission trips. Mission trips have trainings and they have requirements. I mean, the first requirement that's built right into every mission trip we do is you have to fundraise your money. Like you're not going to be able to go on this trip if you don't have a certain amount of X dollars in your account. And we help out with that, obviously, but you got to be active in that whole thing, right? But then also you have to be there at the trainings. Your parents have to come to the different things. And there's a lot of requirements built into it. And until this year, Sonny, we used our mission trip as the carrot to keep students in our small group program, because our small group program ran independent of our youth group. So we had a small group night and a youth group night. Now we're small group and youth group on the same night. And so we use that to say, hey, you got to be here if you're going to go on this trip, because what we saw when we had exclusive programming like that, like small groups, was that it started off kind of big and there was a lot of enthusiasm right after camp. And then throughout the year, it kind of shrunk. And then it got down to really the core kids. And we wanted to make sure that they were all there and still engaged. And so the way we incentivized that was with the mission trip. I'm not against either one of those things. In fact, I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be good to have certain incentivized programs. In your context, I would say that, there's some very real things that you have to meet to go on your stuff. Yeah. Like, I mean, you have to not be high on drugs, well,
honestly, the biggest thing, TJ, it's not even that. The biggest thing that I've always done, and it was easier when we were a smaller team and it was only 2 or 3 of us, it was easier because everybody knew everybody. Now that it's bigger, to me, it's all about the relationship. Like, do you have enough relationship established with the kid that if you invite them on an event, you can trust what they tell you, and if there is a situation, they will listen to you in the moment and stuff like that. And so to me, that's really it. Like if they're using, but they're talking to you about it and they're actively talking to you about it and they're not hiding it and stuff and you're having dialogue about it, that's one thing. But if you don't have that relationship established where they can't be honest with you about it and you can't trust the kid on an event, that's what to me where it's like the line gets drawn. I
want to clarify something right there, is that you opened up with a story this week of a kid you had to send home because they were high.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying there is, they can be actively using, but on your event, you don't want them to be.
But there was nobody who had an established relationship with this kid. And that was the problem. Is the counselor that allowed her to come, that I went ahead and went and said, okay, no problem. We reacted in the moment. I gave the counselor benefit of the doubt, gave the kid benefit of the doubt, even though I knew I shouldn't have done it. And luckily nothing bad happened and it was all good. But it was another reminder that unless we have an established relationship with the kid, we can't be taking on these events, man.
And I wonder if we're talking about it wrong then, because it sounds like you're talking about basic requirements for you to feel safe to bring a kid on an event as opposed to incentivized, because those are very different conversations. Like an incentive is like, do these things and then you'll get this thing. But what you're saying here is I need to know this kid enough to know that if something happens, that I'm going to be able to keep everyone safe, including that kid in this situation.
Yes and no. I mean, I guess it's like, do you just let anybody come to your events? Maybe that's it. Like do you let anybody come to your events no matter what?
I do. Yes.
So we don't, we can't, we have to have relationships established because there's too much risk.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we have in the past, like for instance, when we were doing camps, the first couple of years we were doing camps, we were like, all right, you have to pee clean for a month prior to camp. And I hated doing that, because it was like the kid who needs it the most might be using up until camp. One year we had a kid detoxing off meth at camp, and for the first 3 days he hated it, but the last couple of days it was the best time of his life. And so like that kid wouldn't be able to come under those rules, but I had a relationship with them, so it was okay, and so yeah, I think it is maybe just the guidelines for allowing them to come. But unless there's a relationship established.
And truthfully, in my context, like I would have no ability to have any of that information in front of me, like about them being detoxing or their drug and criminal backgrounds. Like we don't take background checks for any of that stuff. So yeah, I wish that on a very like real practical level, Sonny, like we have kids who come with disabilities sometimes, whether it be personal or personality or developmental, I don't know, but they come and there's obviously something not normal about their interactions with other people. And the thing that frustrates, I think, so many youth pastors is all you have to do, parents, and if you're a parent and you listen to this and you have a kid with some sort of disability, all you got to do is poke your head in and just give us a heads up on like what's going on, how do we interact, give us your phone number, because the truth is like we're not professionals at that stuff, and you dropping your kid off actually puts us in a place of liability, and it puts them in a place of liability. And so if you got to do your work on that stuff. But yeah, no, we can't. We don't do that.
How many times are you calling parents? Like, do you act in your program? Do you call parents and meet with them and say, hey, your kid's been coming to youth group for a few weeks. You want to sit down and have some coffee? I can tell you what he's doing here. You can tell me how he's doing at home. You ever do something like that?
Absolutely. If there's a problem, or
why if there's a problem?
Well, because usually my relationship is with the student if there is no problem. And if there isn't a problem, if parents don't reach out, I tend to just only extend to the student. And that really is a result only of how big the program is, Sonny. There's 250 students.
But how many volunteers did you got?
Probably 35 or 40.
So that's 5 kids per volunteer. 5 families.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. So yes. So if that's what you're talking about, yes, we do ask parents to talk to their small group leaders, especially if a student comes to me and says, hey, this,
but I mean, you're asking parents to reach out, but do you reach out to the parents? Like, do you wait until a problem happens, or do you wait until a parent contacts you guys? Or are you guys being proactive and saying, hey, this kid's been coming for a few weeks. Let's make contact with mom or dad, establish a relationship. That way, in case something goes wrong in the future, we can talk about it. Or just to say, hey, your kid's doing great. Anything else we should know, or anything we should know about it?
I usually, if a parent doesn't reach out, we just stay in our lane with the student. And we do. And there's all sorts of reasons for that, Sonny. I mean, just even look at our houses growing up. Like, if a youth leader was going to reach out to your dad or your mom about you when you were in high school, how far would that conversation have gone?
I don't know. It might have gone really well because I was struggling and my mom knew I was struggling. So
well, in my situation, it probably wouldn't have gone very well. In fact, it didn't go very well.
Yeah. But don't you think youth ministry is just always operated like that, and so therefore it's just they never.
Yeah, I think it is a flaw of youth ministry is that we're not parent ministry. But the problem with that is that that youth ministry does exist in such a way that it's supposed to be sort of this sort of thing. And it's not that. Here's the thing: is what you're I think what you're seeing here is anti-parent. We're kind of off topic.
No.
But it's not anti.
I'm saying reach out to the parent. Just.
But the problem with that is it's just as far as resources go and what we're trying to do, that's kind of like pie in the sky. Well, why don't you guys do this? Or why? There's all sorts of things you can do. You have to figure out what you should do and how you should do it. And you've ran classes for parents, and how many people showed up for those in the past?
Sure.
I remember when we did that. We did this whole, and it was awesome. It was one of the coolest things. We spent time developing curriculum for how to deal with parenting kids through this technological boom that we were going through, because we were dealing with kids every week at youth group coming forward saying, I got porn problems, and I just sent my girlfriend just sent me this pic, and my mom saw it. We were dealing with that every week at youth group, and so our answer was, hey, let's get the parents on board. And so we said, hey, and we reached out to every parent that was in our youth ministry. At least I did, and I said, hey, me and Sonny are going to be doing this parenting. We're not even. I don't know if it was a parenting class, but it was just let's get on board about technology. And man, we spent some time really developing good curriculum for that. And how many parents came to it?
Yeah, not that much. 5.
And then by the end of it, 2. I remember my first time running that class, I had 3 people in it, and one of them was just an old dude who needed help with his printer.
But again, that wasn't one context. But I mean, like, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. Like, we're required by state and federal laws to reach out to parents, to have them be active in the assessment process and treatment planning process, and doing family groups, and we're definitely kid-centered, and we partner with the parent to become allies for the kid, and then also kind of help the parent at home and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for us, we will always partner with parents. In fact, the best relationships we've had in ministry is partnering with parents.
But it sounds like in youth ministry, you wait until the parents contact you. You don't actively like reach out to them and say, hey. But like, think about it. Like, think of, Max in five years starts going to youth group. Youth pastor calls and says, hey, man, your kid's been coming to my youth group the past couple of weeks. Just want to let you know he's great attitude. Anything we should know going on at home or something like that, or anything we should know about Max, just to open that door. I think it can revolutionize youth ministry, man.
Right. Well, this has been a enlightening episode of the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. It's been a good one when it goes an hour and 7 minutes. It probably won't be that long when I cut it all down, but man, we got a lot of good content here. Hey guys, if you could do us a huge favor, and if you know of any other people who work with Fringe youth students, or maybe youth pastors who you've had a bunch of kids come to their youth group and they don't know what to do with them, if you could recommend our podcast to those people. The number one way our podcast grows is by word of mouth, by other youth pastors who are trusted, saying, hey, you should check this. You should check this one out. We're going to work on being as consistent as we possibly can. Life does happen with us, but we're going to try at least get 3 to 4 new episodes out every month. In just a few short weeks, we're going to be live, or at least I'll be live in the National Youth Workers Convention in Tampa. Britt will be with me, and so maybe she'll be on the show, but I'm also going to try to get interviews with some of the thought leaders inside of youth ministry. And so be looking forward to all of that stuff. But other than that, we love you, randos. Thank you for being on this journey with us. Sonny, you got anything else you want to add? Nope. This is the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.